Today I've got something really special to take a look at, or at least this is something I've been waiting on for months and it finally came to my doorstep. So, a little bit of backstory about this particular figure. This is actually not the original Giraffe Beastbox. This is a follow-up that came out, I don't know, maybe like a month after the original, which actually was released in the early part of this year. I believe in January, it might have been February, but it seems like it was January. But one way or the other, that particular figure was named Moon Safari. So this one is BB-69CL Giraffe. And the CL is a designation for where it's sold at retail, and that is the zoo inside the Chimelong theme park complex, which is for me on the other side of the globe over in mainland China. So anyways, a little backstory on Moon Safari. That particular release didn't quite hit the spot for me. Yeah. So it's, as with this giraffe, a really great looking figure design, but it had an olive military drab color scheme and it didn't have spots on it. And I don't know, I kind of feel like with a giraffe, it's just one of those animals that you really identify by its color and spots. So I was really holding out to get something that's a little closer to the true life animal. And sure enough, like I said, about a month later, they came out with this one. However, that being said, obviously this is not a first run release. It's BB-69CL Giraffe, and that is a designation for where it's sold at. So 5T Toys has a licensing deal with Chimelong theme parks, and apparently, as far as I understand, that license deal requires them to sell them in the park. They can't sell this figure anywhere else. So the bottom line is basically this figure is not available at general retail. So how do you get it? You find a dude on eBay who sells it at a huge markup. So that's the route I had to go. And there are guys who do that, of course. And I think the gist of what that is some guy puts this up for sale on eBay. It's some kid in China or whatever, an enterprising fellow, we can say, who I assume actually goes into the park and goes to their gift shop or whatever their retail outlet is and buys up a bunch of these, shoves them in a backpack or whatever, then puts them up for sale on eBay, and then they sell it for a premium, of course, and guys like me who are really interested in this kind of figure are willing to pay the money for it. And I will tell you that I absolutely did pay a premium for this figure. It's a figure I really wanted, so it was worth the money to me, so we can just call it that. The biggest downside to this particular figure, though, is that it doesn't come with bonus items like Moon Safari did, which are a pair of cannons that kind of mount on its back or whatever, and they've actually got little seats. So little figures called hexanoids can actually sit inside those cannon mounts. Kind of missed out on that display capability, but oh well. I really wanted the real world accurate version of this figure, and they did actually release it, and that's that. So this is what I have to show today, and I'm very much looking forward to showing this figure off. So that being the case, let's just jump right in. So, obviously you got the character designation on the front here. Got a little bit of a gloss spot coat on there. You got the Chimelong logo, that's done with a foil stamping, it looks really nice. And the character itself, the giraffe, really nice artwork. And I really dig the color scheme on this package. Kind of got this kind of sunset orange and browns or whatever, very much on theme for Safari. You got some really cool Safari graphics and stuff like that. Of course, the ever-present instruction, where there are actually no instructions on the back of the box. Got an image of this character in its cube mode, and its head has to wrap all the way up like that. Designed by X2R. That's 5T Toys' genius in-house design team. They do so many of these Beastbox figures. So in the earlier years of Beastboxes, 5T Toys was farming out a lot of designs to a lot of other design shops. I mean, they may still be doing that to a degree. I don't think they're working with that many more outside teams anymore. They seem to be able to handle that mostly in-house. So yeah, cool artwork of the giraffe, coming back around to the front. And yeah, like I was saying, you know, I did pay a premium for this particular figure. Unfortunately, the box that I got came a little bit crumpled in the mail. Not a huge deal, but it's just one of those things that it's like, man, you know, for what I paid for this, I think you could have put a little more into it. You know, whatever, it's fine. Still keeping the box. And speaking of which, I don't want to waste any more time. I want to get this thing out. So we got my trusty red devil. We're going to get this thing open. So there's Giraffe, and like I said, no bonus item, nothing. Pretty bare bones figure. You got the figure, you got a box charger, and that's it. Now, here's something that is really interesting to me. Came with an additional plastic insert to kind of keep the legs spread out, I guess. So that's interesting. Real quick, that's something else that's interesting to note, is this figure did come in an oversized package, so that's about the standard size of a Beastbox for a 5cm figure. And just given the overall size, and this thing unfolds from 5 centimeters into a very tall creature, they had to put it in an oversized box, so just one point to note there. Also, one other interesting thing here, and this is surprising to me, is this particular figure comes with an old style box charger. So brand new figure that came out this year, a little bit of a diversion from the newer style box charger with all these holes and stuff in it, so don't know why they did that. But they did, and it's welcome to me. All right, so that is BB-69CL Giraffe in all of his realistic paint scheme glory. Beautiful looking figure design. I mean, there's a ton of articulation on here. That's the main thing to me, is that it's the correct color for a real life giraffe, and it has the reticulated spots and whatnot. I love that. But it does have some pretty cool mechanical styling. So you have these sort of chromed out kind of aqua blue pipes and stuff like that coming off of it here. Really nice. Just beautiful mechanical detailing all the way around. All these little indentations in here. I love how you got this sort of yellow plastic overlaying on top of the white there. This random little graphic there. You got the Chimolong logo there in gold. Yeah, beautiful graphics all the way around this creature. And I'm sure it's going to have a Beast Faction logo, maybe. I don't know. Interestingly enough, I'm not seeing it. Huh. I'll be darned, I'm not finding the Land Animal Faction symbol. That is a little surprising, and it's something that's rarely missed off of these figures, but it is on this one, so, huh. So yeah, beautiful detailing all the way around. I love the mechanical components that are going in here. You got this sort of hydraulic tube here for the neck. Just got the overall shape and whatever of a giraffe that you would expect to see of a real life animal. And I mean, it looks great. It really finds that balance between, you know, having the silhouette of a realistic animal, but also having a lot of robotic features and whatnot. As far as its height, take a look at that real quick here. So I just recently reviewed Sacred Power Robo, and this guy towers over that figure. This is a combiner figure. It's also a 5 centimeter figure that is formed of 4 separate robots and whatever. And he's a shouty compared to Mr. Giraffe here. So same goes for IG-88, one of the taller Star Wars Black Series figures you'll see out there. And he's short compared to that dude. And that even goes for Unis, which is one of the taller Beastbox figures out there, or Megabox, if you will. So you hear that, Unis? You are now officially a shouty compared to Mr. Giraffe here.
Laugh it up, meatbag. I made you. I made all of you. Size matters not. You haven't seen the last of me.
All right, so yeah, again, you know, like I said, just beautiful detailing all around this figure. I mean, at first appearance, I'll tell you what, I'm completely happy with this thing. Got some nice joints there in the legs. Look at that. That is incredible. You can get kind of a prancing position there. Doesn't look like I can quite get the leg up as far as I might like. But giraffes aren't really known to stick out their forelimbs, so probably nothing really super lost in that regard. Hind limbs, yeah, got a pretty good range of motion, and most of the really necessarily articulated joints are on ball sockets, so they give you a pretty good range of motion as far as that goes. They can turn in and out, left and right, up and down. Anything you need there. Even the tail has a little bit of a bend in it. That's interesting. Yeah, as far as the head and neck, got a complete range of motion there, and bring the neck all the way back, and that's going to be necessary, I'm sure, for its transformation. Head can go down. It has a very nice range of articulation. Very beautifully detailed, and I'm really digging this figure. Look at that. He's even got a little bit of a smile there. So he looks like a happy giraffe. So before I forget, real quick, one thing I forgot to do was take the other stuff out of the package. That is the catalog and all the other stuff that comes with it, and the instructions. Now, what's interesting here is this catalog is apparently specific to Chimolong figures, so wow, I did not realize there were so many of them. So I've actually only got a few of these. So I've got this guy, Wrist Dragon, I've got the Rinkadon, got Turtle, and I've got Nessie. Also have Glacier. As far as Chimolong goes, generally, the figures that 5-2 Toys releases under license with them are a little closer to what you would consider a true-to-life accurate color scheme, and obviously with a character like Nessie, you know, that's up in the wind, you have no idea what that's going to be, but then you have Glacier. But, you know, there's also the Emperor Penguin, so they kind of went both ways on that one. So anyways, as far as giraffe goes, it's a little bit of a throwback to Beastbox, more traditional figure cards. Yeah, I got the character name on there, BB-69CL, of course, and a little detail on the back here, and I guess with Chim-Along characters, they do not have a bio. Kind of goes without saying that you don't necessarily need that for something that's supposed to represent a true-to-life animal anyways. But it does have some nice graphics and styling on it, so that's pretty cool. And also, for some reason, this gloss coat stamp here, and unfortunately I can't read Mandarin, so I don't know exactly what this says, but it's a lot of details about the creature, and it's actually rated, so that's interesting. Something else here is you have the land animal faction symbol, but that is nowhere to be found on this particular figure. All right, we're going to move on to a transformation demo here pretty soon. But before I do, I want to touch on a couple other things real quick. One feature of articulation that I didn't touch on a little bit earlier. Took me a little figuring out how to get it done, but I have seen in photos where you can get this giraffe to stoop its neck, and it's not really obvious how you do that. Promo shots that I've seen have it splaying its legs out a little bit, and then the neck stoops down kind of in front of it. That is a pretty good emulation of how giraffes drink water in real life. When they need to reach something on the ground, they have to spread their legs out and get their neck all the way down. So a little awkward looking. But anyways, there's no obvious joint, so you can't just crank its neck down. And it took me a little figuring out how to get that done, but there is also an additional sort of like a double hinge joint here. So you can stretch the neck up and over. I don't think that's part of the transformation, but I'll have to double check on that. We're going to find out here in just a little bit. And then you can bring the neck all the way down. And of course you can pivot the head up, spread the legs out like you might need to for a giraffe that's going to get himself a little drink of water. So that's one point. Another thing I wanted to touch on here is this is obviously a safari creature. And 52 Toys has done other safari type creatures from the sub-Sahara, kind of the desert, African continent, that kind of thing. The kind of creatures that we associate with deep Africa jungle. So there are some common little characters that you can have your giraffe pal around with that absolutely would work within this character's reality. And I happen to have a whole bunch here that are just part of my collection that really seem to fit within Giraffe's world, in my opinion. So, as 52 Toys often does, they kind of follow their whim on, what makes for an interesting figure. They don't necessarily just replicate a real-life animal. They add some features and stuff like that that makes sense to them and adds a little character to the figure. As an example, you have a character like here called Painkiller, which is a hippo, and hippos are very deadly. They're very dangerous. So it's absolutely hilarious to me that this one's sort of decked out with a first aid responder motif. Just really dig the look of that character. So to that point, basically, I would like to see 52 Toys do more safari-related figures. So one thing I'll say about the hippo and the rhino for that matter is these are very early figure designs. I think these are BB-06 or 7 or somewhere in there basically. They're very low down in the number right out of the gate. Both came almost immediately after JoJo, which is the original 5cm Beastbox figure. And, their designs are really endearing. I love the blocky kind of child's toy look to them, kind of like a wind-up toy. But they're very dated looks, especially compared to what they can do with Giraffe and with Baihu back here, which we'll talk about in just a second. Point being is that I would like to see them do more of a safari set that's in line with their more modern design aesthetic and their style that would fit within the framework of a figure like Giraffe. To that point, as an example, Baihu here is a great figure. I think this was a groundbreaking design. When you compare this to their original Jungle Cat mold, this was absolutely next level. It feels like a premium/deluxe type figure. So basically what I would like to see them do is take this and turn it into a lion. It could be done. I would love to see them do that so they had actual safari creatures instead of this mythical fantasy creature. So I would love to see them do a lion. I'd like to see them do a tiger. I would like to see them do a panther. I would love to see them do a cheetah also. Now, for all the Beastbox collectors out there, I know you're going to jump at me and say, yeah, but there's already a tiger out there. And yes, that's true. There's a tiger that was a quote-unquote limited release that was supposed to be specific to Thailand. And they basically just took this exact mold, feathers and all the little flame details, and then just painted on some tiger-like features. And it didn't look accurate at all. I'm sorry to say, was not really fond of that particular design. Tiger stripes are really small. It had a lot of white patches patches kind of on the back end and stuff like that. A real life tiger does not have that type of color pattern, and the stripes are quite a bit more prominent. So that seemed like a bit of a kind of a lazy release in my opinion. So I know a lot of people really like that design, but just didn't really do it for me. Point being, they could do a much more realistic tiger design with this particular mold and do it appropriately. And I think that's worth pursuing to have like a safari set. I mean, we should have a modern take on a hippo, a modern take on a rhino. They're probably overdue to do another version of the alligator. I really like this figure design, but I will admit, you know, this is definitely of their dated older style. They're probably overdue to do another version of Toxicorn here. I think this particular mold could be interpreted as either a Texas longhorn steer or a water buffalo or some type of ox, one way or the other. And I will say that Shovelhead here is, I think, within the framework of the kind of more modern design. So basically for what we're looking at for this spread here, I would say we've got maybe 1, 2, 3, and 4 figures that are within 5-2 Toys more modern design aesthetic and capabilities. I would say the meerkat, the warthog, giraffe of course, and the jungle cat mold are all kind of within that framework of what would be a proper, more modern design aesthetic to go within that. The Safari Deluxe Pack, we'll call it that. All these other guys, great designs again. I really like them, but I think we're due for a design refresh. Come on, 5-2 Toys, put them out there. We'll buy them. Let's go. But at any rate, we need to clear this stuff out of the way so we can get on with the transformation demo. So the first thing we're going to do is take the front legs, and they're both on hinges here, and we're going to swing those hinges out towards the front, and they just untab like so. So you got that going on. Then you have this ball joint at these shoulders, and you're just going to flip that up and forward like so. But there's also an additional hinge right here at the shoulder again that will allow you to swing them over and around, and you're going to have to keep this front plate straight here. So you just want to make sure you swing it from that hinge. Then you're going to rotate the leg around 90 degrees so that the ball socket is exposed on the outside. So we'll do the same on the opposite side like so. And from here, you're going to unclamp this piece. It only needs to come up just a little bit, and it'll flip around, and there's this tab right here, and it'll lock up into that tab. So this particular side is a little bit awkward because it has this tab in the way that's kind of blocking it from going straight down. That's not going to be such a big deal a little bit later on. We'll touch on that in just a bit here. So same on the opposite side. We're going to take that piece, pop it open, flip it up and around, connect it to that tab right there, and there you go. Now on this side, it does not have a tab blocking it, so it'll sit flush up against the side of the figure. From here, we'll take what we would consider the mid-thigh and fold it straight down 90 degrees, about like that, and it'll kind of set in place. It's just wherever the joint stops there. So do the same on the opposite side like that. So then from there, we're going to take the feet, rotate them 90 degrees so that they're turned inward on both sides like that. And there's actually 2 joints here. So you're going to take it from this metal pin joint and you're going to rotate that. You just want to make sure you have the hoof turned up. Then from here, we're going to take this elbow and rotate it all the way up. You have a little tab right here at the right above the hoof, and that's going to connect to that tab right there. So the thing is it's actually 2 separate joints. You just want to make sure you rotate from the top joint so that you have enough length to get it right up against that tab. Then you're going to get it right up in there, and it'll lock into place. Same on the opposite side. Bring it up from that groove. You may have to push on it a little bit, and that'll snap into place just like so. Now this hinge will actually swing all the way forward, so we're going to take that piece on both sides and rotate them out like so they meet in the middle just like that. So you got about that shape going on there. That allows you room to open up the midsection, and then we're going to break open the torso just like that, pop it open. You got about that going on there. So from there, these little jointed pieces, and these are pretty much by design for Moon Safari for its bonus item, if I remember correctly. It's not specific to this figure, but it is a joint that's included on this figure, and we need to include it for part of the transformation, of course. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring these pieces out to the side so they got room to rotate up. So we're going to take them like that. From this hinge right here, we're going to rotate that up and over like so on both sides. So you got about that shape going on there. So now we're going to open up the top of the back leg here, and that'll flip up and over. Kind of got to get your fingernail in there to get those pieces out. You got these opened up, and they're going to flip over and around, and they are on tabs here, so they'll just fold over, close in place like so. And then from there, you're going to want to swing the back legs all the way up and back. You'll have about this shape right here. You just want to make sure this joint is forming sort of a 45-degree angle from this pin joint to the center and then back up again. Now, with this joint in this position, what you're going to do is rotate the hind leg from the top of the thigh and bring it down and around like that, about in that position. While you're doing that, you're just going to want to make sure you have this joint right here maintained in that 45-degree position on both sides. You just have the legs forward about like that. Then from there, we've got enough room to compact up the tail. So we're just going to rotate that down and around like so, and it'll fold around the contour of that particular piece right here. Now this is probably the trickiest part of this transformation. So the top of the thigh is sort of on a double hinge, and what you need to do is rotate that. So you see this tab piece right here? That's actually going to have to fold down and underneath sort of. So you need to kind of work on that joint to kind of get it to go down. It's hard to explain how you do it because it's not a straightforward motion that you have to do to get it to go down. So you basically just have to work it until it folds into position. Yeah, I felt it collapse there. And then basically what you're going to wind up with is the top of this ball socket thigh joint resting on top of that double hinge, and it'll collapse right inside the top of the thigh there. That's why this piece needed to be folded down to make room for the top of this thigh joint to fold up against the side of the thigh there. So we're going to do the same on the other side. There we go. So it's almost like you have to have pressure on top of the ball socket there and then push sort of sideways and then down at sort of like a 45-degree angle. It's kind of hard to explain, but I mean, you can feel it working if you're able to work it in there, but it is not a straightforward joint to get it collapse up, but you'll get it there eventually if you work with it. So you maybe have to work it a little bit more once you even get it to collapse in just to get these joints lined up, because they do need to be right up against each other essentially. I don't think it has to be 100% accurate, but it's got to be close. So we got about that right there. However, what I wound up doing when I was working on this is knock this particular joint out of position. So we're just going to fold that back up and get this back up into that 45-degree angle thing. So we're going to have to take from the ball socket and crank these legs back down into the position they're supposed to be in, which is about right here. For this particular figure, it really is kind of about having pieces in the correct position while you're transforming them. You do have some room to manipulate pieces and get them out of position, but to get to the final box transformation, you just need to make sure everything's lined up where it needs to go. So basically, as far as the transformation goes, you do want the hind legs kind of at this sort of 45-degree angle like that. Having said that, the next step here is to rotate these hind legs. So we got Giraffe's booty right up in the air about like so, and the rest of it is really going to be folding up the joints from these hind legs and getting them to flip up and over towards the back side of the hind legs. So yeah, so starting from these joints right here, we're going to fold them up and over, work the hind legs back here, and then yeah, you may find it easier to rotate the hooves because they're going to have to flip up and over like that. So you might want to start with that piece first, get these lined up like so. And then basically it's just a matter of getting these to line up, and it's a weird angle. So there's nothing to tab in here. Basically you're just going to want to get it lined up about like that, and then they have the hoof flush up against the top of the thigh there. So we'll do the same on the opposite side. Get that hoof right up against the top of the thigh there, and you want them in about that position, something like that. So basically from here you've got the center thin plastic piece. The legs are just going to have to be positioned on both sides. They don't connect together or anything like that, but you're working from this joint right here. So you're going to swing them down and in. Is that correct? So yeah, it's probably going to take a little bit of wiggling to get it in place, but basically this piece needs to be 90 degrees from the top of the body, about like that. But you're going to have to use this joint to slide the whole assembly of the hind leg up and into this cavity. You may just need to kind of push on that a little bit. But yeah, essentially you want to get this piece to rotate back and have this piece flush up against the hind leg, flush up against the top of this piece right here. So it's a little bit of rotating in and pushing up. You'll know you have it together when you have this whole piece flushed up against each other, and then again this center piece, the center thin plastic piece resting up against both legs. So if you got about a 90-degree angle on the back here, on the back of the legs, the bottom there, and 90 degrees on the sides, then you're pretty much good to go. Yeah, and you may have to do a little bit of positioning just to get the joints flushed up and that kind of thing. And you're gonna know pretty quick if you didn't get it right, because this piece won't close around the legs. So we'll just close that up. And it is essentially a tab and post connections. Get it to clamp around. Here again, I didn't quite get it right. Yeah, I see. So right here, I don't have something completely lined up. So we're gonna open that up a little bit and see what I've got going on here. And that is probably because the centerpiece, see, I'm gonna reverse my tracks here and just see what I've got going on. Yeah, I think I felt something lock into place. That's looking correct now. So yeah, basically you just want to make sure everything's lined up. and it'll close together correctly. So if you can't get it to close, that's because the legs aren't lined up correctly. So that was something I did incorrectly this time around, was the center piece wasn't lined up correctly with the legs on both sides. You know, sometimes some of these more advanced figure designs take a little bit of fiddling to get them in the correct position, but ultimately most of them aren't that hard to do. This figure in particular I don't think is a hard transformation. It's just that double joint on the hind leg, but most of the rest of it isn't too bad at all. So moving on, now we're on to a more simple part of the transformation. The forelimbs need to connect to the midsection here, so you got a tab and pose connection. That's just going to fold over and around, connect on the side there like that. Pretty simple. Same on the other side, connect that so. Connects pretty solidly there, so everything's all flush and lined up. And one thing I did not do is I didn't get this tab connected here, so I just need to pop that in. So now these accessory arms just need to fold down and around, and they're going to fold up on the sides like that. There's really not much to them. Then you have these side skirt pieces on the bottom of the neck. Those will need to fold down, and there's a tab piece, so you just grab it from here, fold that piece down like so, and it'll connect pretty solidly right there. Same on the other side, pop that down, fold it in. And the rest of it is really getting the head to fold down and snake around the top side to make the top of the cube. We're gonna take it from this joint, we're gonna bring it up like so. There's a hidden joint there. Then we're gonna fold that sideways like so. And then this piece will collapse down into this cavity here. So you're just gonna bring that down like that. Then from here, we're gonna rotate the center of the neck about 180 degrees. I like that. So you gotta turn that way. Then this piece is gonna fold straight like so. You just want to make sure the top of the neck is collapsed up against the side right there, which by the way is another tab and pose connection. You're going to want to make sure it's actually on both sides. Let's bring that up just a little bit here. So there's a notch right here. Basically it's got to connect to that tab. So you just want to make sure you have that down. And then you may need to use this hinge to get it into position, just so you can get it right up against that notch there. Get it pegged into place. That'll snap in like so. Then you got this piece that's flush up against this side of the cube form. So we're gonna fold it down this way. And there again, tab and pose connection right here. You'll just wanna make sure you're folding it. It's actually on the second one right here. So tab and pose, that'll connect like so. You got about that shape right here. Then you're gonna fold up the ears and the little goat bumps for horns. The head is gonna rotate around 180 degrees like so. So yeah, the top of the head is gonna slide right into that little groove right there. So we'll just fold it up like that, get it connected in there, and then you got yourself a box. Not a bad looking cube. Problem with the more modern Beastbox designs is they are very much, and you know, I would definitely recommend doing some scrunching and stuff when you're done with your transformation just to make sure all the pieces are collapsed into place and whatnot. But yeah, again, the problem with these more modern figures is you don't get a really cool looking clean box design. Everything will fold up into a 2-inch cube, of course, but there's just not a whole lot of style to it. You're basically just seeing a highly articulated animal get collapsed up into a cube shape. And of course, it fits right into its box charger. Beautiful. Now it's time to give this stretch neck superstar of the Savannah a box grade. This is my rating system to 6 categories with up to 5 points each for a total score of anything between 0 to 30 points. As far as the character study of an animal, this is as good as it gets. I wish I didn't have to pay such a high price just to get this figure, but it's exactly what I wanted for this mold and a very worthy replication of a real-life giraffe. 5 out of 5. When it comes to Chimilong licensed Beast boxes, they're more true to animals than action figures, so there's no bonus features or gimmicks to speak of. That being said, Giraffe's play value really comes from its articulation, its overall looks and styling, and it does have plenty of 3mm ports to give it more interactivity with other figures. 3 out of 5. This one has a pretty enjoyable transformation. Parts lock into place nicely and it's fairly intuitive, although the one tricky spot to me is that double joint at the hips. 4 out of 5. Articulation is absolutely perfect. This figure can move and pose just like a real-world giraffe. I really can't think of anything they could have done to improve on this. 5 out of 5. Giraffe is built with high-quality plastic, joints feel nice and firm, and it's overall really easy to work with. It does have a lot of exposed ball socket joints though, and you'll find that a part may occasionally pop out if you twist it the wrong way, but of course they're just as easy to pop back in. 4 out of 5. Giraffe is definitely not of the action figure variety, but what I get from a figure that's well built, has great articulation and design cues, and is fun to transform is something that I want to take out of the box charger and play with more often. This is a great figure. 5 out of 5. And that brings the box grade total to 26 out of 30. So that's a quick unboxing and reaction to BB-69CL Giraffe. This is a great figure, and I'm glad I finally got it. Right now, if you live outside of China, it's one that you're unfortunately going to have to pay a premium to get, but for me, it was well worth the price. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you could take a few seconds to leave a like or a comment, I'll appreciate it. I always enjoy hearing from you. I've got more Beastbox and Star Wars Black Series reviews in the works, and a new figure on the way called Firepower Robo, which is sort of a counterpart to the recent released Sacred Power Robo. I did a review of that one recently, so if it's a figure you're curious about, that's definitely worth a watch. One way or the other, have yourself a great week, and I'll catch you in the next one.